One of the things that you hear us talk about a lot here on Oklahoma Gardening is the importance of adding organic matter to your soil. And today I just wanted to give you a few quick composting tips for those of you who are newer gardeners. Over here I have a few soil types that I wanted to show you and tell you how compost can help those. First of all, if you have a sandy soil, compost can help to improve the water holding capacity of that and also its nutrient holding capacity. Meanwhile, if your soil is clayey, like a lot of them in Oklahoma are, adding compost will help to improve the drainage of that soil and also to improve its structure. Now here I've got some of our garden soil that we've added organic matter to, and look how nice that is. It's nice and crumbly and it looks like cake crumbs. Well, building a compost pile is really pretty easy. One of the first things that you need to remember is to have a carbon to nitrogen ratio of 30:1. While that sounds a little bit technical, it's actually pretty easy to do. Materials that are high in carbon are usually brown, things such as leaves and straw and sawdust and things like that. Meanwhile, items that are high in nitrogen tend to be green, like fresh grass clippings or peels from vegetables in your kitchen. Eggshells are also a very high source of nitrogen. There are some things that you want to remember not to put into your compost pile, and that's things like meat and dairy products, because those will start to smell, and also they'll draw animals to your compost pile. Also, you don't want to put diseased plants in because the disease might carry over, or plants with weeds with mature seeds. You don't want to put those in your compost pile because you might be planting weeds into your garden next year. A really handy tool for a compost pile is a compost thermometer. You want your compost pile to be between 130 and 170 degrees, and this is a really good tool to monitor that. Well, one of the really important parts of a compost pile is its aeration. And part of that, a very important part of that, is to turn the pile. Now, one of the tricks when turning a compost pile is to take the compost from the outside of the pile and place it towards the center. Meanwhile, you want to take that nice, good compost in the middle of the pile and place that towards the outside. So basically, you're turning your compost inside out when you turn it. Now, like I said, aeration is very important, so it's a good idea to have a bin that has slats in it, and also a pallet underneath is good because that gives you some circulation. You could also use chicken wire or something that will let the air in. Well, as you're turning your compost pile, it should have a nice earthy smell to it, but sometimes it doesn't. If you notice that your pile has kind of an ammonia smell to it, that means that you've got too much nitrogen product in there, and so you need to add some brown material. Sometimes your pile may have a rotting smell to it, and it means it's too wet. One of the important things to check is the moisture content of your soil, your compost. And here, if you squeeze that and it sticks together, that's great. You don't want any water to fall out of it, but you don't want it to be dry. Now, if you notice that your compost pile isn't heating up, it's probably two things you ought to check. One is the moisture. If it's too dry, you'll want to add some water to it. And the other thing is, it may have too much brown matter in it, or carbon matter, and so you want to add some nitrogen. Well, that's really great in the summertime because you can add all those grass clippings. But in the fall, when all of those leaves are around and it's all that brown matter, you may want to add a little bit of high nitrogen fertilizer to your compost pile, and that'll serve the same purpose. Well, I hope these tips help you, and just remember that this fall, when all of those leaves are on the ground, save that up and stockpile it in the form of compost.
We hope you enjoyed this video. It's part of our OK Gardening Classics YouTube channel. You can also find more recent videos on our Oklahoma Gardening YouTube channel. And join us on social media for great gardening tips, photos, and discussion.